Emily stood at the sink, rinsing the last plate from lunch. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee, the kind she made out of habit even though no one else was home to drink it. The afternoon sun slipped through the blinds, painting thin golden lines across the counter. It should have felt warm, comforting, but the silence pressed too heavy. The house had been too quiet for too long. Daniel, her husband, had been gone most days. His job pulled him into long hours, late nights, endless calls. Emily told herself she understood. She told herself it was just a season, that things would get better. But the truth was clear in the untouched dinners and half-hearted kisses. They were drifting. Slowly, silently. Her hand lingered on the dish towel, staring at nothing. When a sudden knock at the door broke through the stillness, sharp, unexpected. The sound startled her enough that she nearly dropped the plate. She wiped her hands quickly and hurried through the hallway. Her heart strangely uneasy. When she pulled the door open, her breath caught. Standing on the porch was Ryan, Daniel's best friend. Emily blinked, unsure if she was imagining him. Ryan was supposed to be out of town. At least that's what Daniel had said when he mentioned him last. But here he was, tall, broad-shouldered, with that familiar, easy posture, only this time, his expression wasn't easy at all. "Ryan?" Her voice was uncertain, almost whispering. "Hi, Emily." Its tone was low, careful. Not the usual cheerful greeting she was used to. He didn't smile right away, and that unsettled her more than the knock itself. For a moment, neither of them moved. The breeze stirred the trees outside, and Emily realized she was gripping the edge of the door harder than she meant to. Finally, she stepped aside. "Come in." Ryan nodded once and crossed the threshold. His eyes flicked around the hallway as though searching for Daniel, but of course the house was empty. Emily led him into the kitchen, still smelling of coffee and soap, and gestured toward the table. He sat, resting his hands flat against the wood. And for the first time since she had opened the door, she saw something in his eyes: hesitation. Maybe even conflict. "You surprised me," she said, trying to sound casual. "Daniel's not home. He's at the office." "I know," Ryan answered quickly. His voice was firm, almost too firm, like he wanted to cut off the thought before it settled. Emily frowned. "Then why?" He shook his head, exhaling heavily, but didn't answer right away. Instead, he let his gaze drift to the window, where the sunlight stretched across the counter and reflected off the coffee pot. The quiet between them felt heavier than it should have. Emily reached for 2 cups and poured coffee into them both, only to keep her hands busy. She set one in front of him, the steam rising between them. His fingers curled around the cup, but he didn't drink. Something in the way he looked at her made her chest tighten. Ryan had always been around cookouts, football games, birthdays. He was part of Daniel's world and, by extension, part of hers. But he had never looked at her like this. Not once. Not in all those years. And now, as he sat there, silent but intense, she realized this wasn't a casual visit. It wasn't about Daniel, or a favor, or some forgotten errand. It was something else. Emily's pulse quickened. She didn't know why, but she suddenly wanted to run back to the sink, to hide behind the normal routine of dishes and chores. Yet she stayed, frozen in the moment, staring across the table at the man who had been her husband's closest friend. Then Ryan finally spoke, his voice softer than before. "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important." Her lips parted, but no words came. She didn't know what he meant. Not fully, but deep down, she had an idea. And that idea frightened her more than she wanted to admit. She folded her hands together to steady herself, her wedding ring catching the light. "Ryan, what's going on?" His jaw tightened, and for a second, she thought he wouldn't answer. But then, with a kind of quiet determination, he lifted his gaze and held her eyes. And in that gaze, Emily knew whatever he was about to say, it was going to change everything. The knock had been just the beginning. Emily sat at the kitchen table, her hands clasped around the warm coffee cup, though she hadn't taken a sip. Ryan sat across from her, his shoulders tense, his eyes restless. She had seen him countless times at barbecues, game nights, family gatherings, but never like this. He wasn't relaxed, he wasn't smiling. He looked like a man carrying a weight he had no idea how to set down. She tried to break the silence. "So, you wanted to talk?" Ryan's fingers tapped against the mug, then stilled. He didn't answer right away. His jaw clenched, then relaxed, then clenched again, as if he was wrestling with something inside. Finally, he leaned forward, his voice quiet but steady. "Emily, I've watched you for months now." Her chest tightened. "What do you mean?" He continued, his eyes locking on hers. "I see what Daniel doesn't. I see the way you've been holding this house together alone. The way you smile even when you're hurting. I see how often he's gone, how empty this place feels when he leaves you behind, and I can't ignore it anymore." Emily blinked, stunned. She hadn't expected this. Not from him. Ryan had always been Daniel's biggest supporter, his closest ally. To hear him speak like this felt almost unreal. "Ryan," she whispered, shaking her head, "you shouldn't say things like that. He's your best friend." "I know," Ryan said quickly, almost cutting her off. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the emotions he was trying so hard to control. "And believe me, I've told myself that every single day. But Emily, I can't unsee what I've seen. I can't unfeel what I feel." Her pulse quickened. She wanted to stand, to walk away, to break the tension filling the room, but her body wouldn't move. She was frozen, caught between shock and something else she didn't want to name. Ryan's gaze softened, though his words grew sharper. "He doesn't notice the way you wait up for him. He doesn't notice the dinners you make, the care you put into every little thing. He doesn't notice when you sit here alone staring at the door. But I notice. I've always noticed." Tears stung her eyes before she realized they were coming. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry over Daniel's distance anymore. She had learned to swallow the loneliness, to keep her smile steady when he walked through the door late at night, smelling of exhaustion and work. But hearing someone else say the words out loud, words she had never dared to admit, cracked something inside her. "Stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, stop." But Ryan didn't. He leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "Emily, I need you to hear this. Because I can't keep it locked inside. I care about you. More than I should. More than I've ever admitted to anyone. And I can't keep pretending that I don't." "Ah!" Her breath caught. She pressed a hand to her mouth as if she could push the words back, but it was too late. They hung in the air between them, impossible to erase. Ryan's eyes searched hers, desperate, vulnerable, pleading. For once, the man who was always so confident seemed broken, uncertain, exposed. Emily shook her head slowly, trying to steady her voice. "Do you have any idea what you're saying? Do you know what this could do?" "I do," Ryan replied firmly. "I know exactly what I'm risking. But I also know you don't deserve to feel invisible. You deserve someone who sees you, who values you, who listens when you speak. And if Daniel won't, then I will." The words were too much, too heavy. She pushed her chair back slightly, her hand trembling against the table. "Ryan, you can't. This isn't right. Not asking for anything," he said quickly, raising his hands as if to show he meant no harm. "I just needed you to know. Because even if nothing changes, I can't stand by and watch you fade into the background. You deserve to feel alive." Her heart thudded painfully. She wanted to argue, to deny, to reject everything he had just said. But deep inside, beneath the guilt and fear, there was another feeling, one she had buried for so long she barely recognized it. The feeling of being seen. Truly seen. And in that moment, she hated how much those words mattered. Emily turned her face toward the window, blinking away the tears threatening to fall. The trees swayed gently in the afternoon breeze, the world outside so calm while her own world tilted. She thought of Daniel, of their early days together, of the laughter and warmth that used to fill this home. When had it disappeared? When had she become a shadow in her own marriage? Ryan's voice broke the silence again, softer this time, almost a whisper. "I'm sorry if I've crossed a line. I just couldn't keep it inside anymore." She didn't look at him, afraid of what her eyes might reveal. Ryan, you should go." The words came out steadier than she felt, but her hand still trembled against her lap. For a moment, he didn't move. She could feel his eyes on her, lingering as if he was memorizing her face, her silence, the space between them. Then, slowly, he pushed back his chair and stood. "I'll go," he said quietly. "But Emily, remember this? You're not alone. Not as long as I'm around." And with that, he turned and walked toward the hallway. She listened to the sound of his footsteps fading, the front door clicking shut, and then the heavy silence returning to the house. Emily sat there, staring at the untouched coffee, her heart still racing, her mind torn apart, because no matter how much she wanted to deny it, one truth echoed louder than the restaurant had seen her, and she couldn't forget it. Emily sat frozen in the kitchen long after Ryan left, but his words stayed with her. They clung to her like a secret she couldn't wash away. She wanted to dismiss them, to convince herself he hadn't meant it. But the truth was clear in his voice, his eyes. He had meant every word. By the next afternoon she was restless. Daniel had called again, saying he would be late, and Emily found herself pacing the living room, the clock ticking louder with every minute. When the doorbell rang, she jumped. Her heart pounded as she walked to the door. She knew who it was before she opened it. Ryan Dott. He stood there, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, his face pale, his eyes carrying that same unsettled weight. She thought of sending him away. She thought of closing the door before he could say a word, but she didn't. Instead, she stepped aside. Letting him in, the air between them was thick as they moved into the kitchen again. The same table, the same chairs, the same untouched coffee pot sitting cold from the morning. Emily didn't sit this time. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, trying to protect herself from what she knew was coming. "Why are you here again, Ryan?" Her voice was sharp, though her hands trembled. He didn't flinch. He looked at her, steady, determined. "Because I didn't finish what I needed to say yesterday." Emily shook her head, but before she could stop him, the words spilled out. "I've been holding this inside for years. From the moment Daniel introduced me to you, I noticed something different. At first, I thought it was just admiration. You were kind, genuine, the type of person who made everyone feel comfortable. But the more time I spent around you, the harder it became to ignore. Every holiday, every dinner, every laugh we shared in this very room, I felt it. And I hated myself for it, because you belonged to him, my best friend." Emily's chest tightened, as if she couldn't breathe. His voice wasn't dramatic or rehearsed. It was raw, almost broken. "I told myself it was wrong," Ryan continued, his hands tightening at his sides. "I tried to bury it. I dated other people. I distracted myself. I threw myself into work. But no matter what I did, it didn't go away. Every time I saw you, it got harder to keep quiet. And when I saw the way Daniel kept pulling away from you, the way he barely looked at you anymore, I couldn't take it. I couldn't stand by and watch you disappear." Tears welled in Emily's eyes before she could stop them. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Yes, I do," Ryan said firmly. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Emily pressed her hands against the counter to steady herself. The kitchen spun with the weight of his confession. She wanted to tell him to leave, to protect the fragile balance of her marriage, but her heart betrayed her. His words stirred something buried deep inside, something she hadn't felt in years. The aching need to be noticed, to be valued, to be loved. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice breaking, "this isn't fair. Not to me, not to Daniel, not to you." "I know," he admitted, his expression pained. "But Emily, you deserve more than silence. You deserve more than waiting for a man who doesn't even see what he has in front of him. And if I'm the only one willing to say it, then so be it." Her tears spilled, hot and uncontrollable. She turned away, ashamed of the emotions rushing through her. Guilt, anger, longing. She had built her life around loyalty, around love, around promises made years ago. But now, standing in her kitchen with Ryan's confession hanging in the air, She felt cracks forming in everything she thought was unshakable. "Stop," she said again. This time louder, her voice trembling with both fear and need. "I can't hear this. I can't. I don't want to feel this." Ryan stepped closer, careful, not reaching for her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his presence. His voice dropped low, almost breaking. "I'm not asking you to do anything, Emily. I'm not asking you to choose me or to betray him. All I'm asking is that you don't forget what I said. Even if you never speak of it again, remember that someone sees you. Remember that you matter." The words pierced her like a blade and a bomb at once. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run. Instead, she stood there, silent, tears slipping down her cheeks. Her breath uneven. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, each second stretching into forever. Emily's heart raced as she tried to gather her thoughts. But everything inside her was chaos. Finally, she found her voice. "Ryan, please just go." He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He only looked at her one last time. His expression filled with something she couldn't name, love, sorrow. Long and then, he turned and walked out the door. Emily collapsed into the nearest chair, her hands covering her face. The silence returned, but it wasn't the same. It was heavier, louder, suffocating. Because now her secret wasn't just loneliness. Her secret was knowing that Daniel's best friend loved her. And worse than that, some part of her had wanted to hear it. The sun had already slipped low when Emily finally rose from the chair. Hours had passed since Ryan left, yet the house still carried his presence. His words echoed in every corner, pressing against her like a weight she couldn't shake. She wanted to erase it, to pretend the conversation had never happened. But her heart wouldn't let her. The sound of tires rolling into the driveway snapped her out of her thoughts. Daniel was home. The man she had promised her life to. The man she had waited for every evening. The man who barely noticed the effort she put into holding their world together. Emily wiped her face quickly, forcing herself to look calm, normal. As the front door opened, "Hey," Daniel called, his tone casual, tired. He dropped his briefcase near the door and loosened his tie. "Smells like coffee. Did you just make some?" Emily's throat tightened. She shook her head lightly. "It's been sitting there since the morning." Daniel didn't notice the tension in her voice. He walked over and kissed her cheek, his lips brushing lightly against her skin. It was the kind of kiss that looked like affection but felt more like routine. He moved past her, pulling out a chair at the table, flipping through messages on his phone as if the silence between them didn't exist. Emily stood by the counter, her arms crossed, watching him. Part of her wanted to scream, to demand he look at her, to ask if he realized how far they had drifted. Another part of her wanted to bury everything, to pretend nothing had changed, to live safely inside the quiet. But nothing felt safe anymore. Daniel glanced up, finally noticing her distant expression. "You okay?" She hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't betray her. "I'm fine. Just tired." He nodded, already distracted again by his phone. "Long day at the office, too," he muttered, as if that explained everything, as if that excused the gaps that had been growing for months. Emily sat across from him, her heart aching. She thought of Ryan's voice, raw and certain. "You're not invisible. Someone sees you." The memory burned inside her. She hated that it felt like oxygen in a room where she had been suffocating. The night stretched on quietly. Daniel ate dinner while half focused on emails, offering small comments, but never truly listening. Emily answered with short nods, her mind elsewhere. Torn between guilt and longing, when he finally went upstairs to shower. She stayed behind in the kitchen, staring at the empty chair where Ryan had sat only hours before. That chair now felt like a secret she couldn't tell. A space that carried more truth than her marriage had in months later. As she slipped into bed beside Daniel, she listened to the sound of the shower running in the bathroom. Her hand brushed against the sheets, cool and empty where his warmth should have been. She closed her eyes, trying to silence the storm inside her. But silence only made the storm louder. Days passed. and Emily found herself caught in an invisible tug-of-war. Daniel came and went, always polite, always busy, always tired. Life with him was steady, but it felt like walking through fog, no light. No color, only routine. Ryan, meanwhile, stayed away. He didn't call, didn't visit. But his absence screamed louder than his presence. Emily thought of him constantly, of the way he looked at her, of the honesty in his words. And though she told herself it was wrong, she couldn't deny the truth. She missed him. One evening, while Daniel worked late again, Emily sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The quiet of the neighborhood wrapped around her, but inside she felt restless. When her phone buzzed, her heart leaped. It was a message from Ryan. "I'm sorry for everything. I won't come around again. But I need you to know I meant every word." Emily's hand trembled as she read it. She stared at the message until her vision blurred. She wanted to reply, but what could she say? She couldn't invite him closer. She couldn't let him go completely. Her heart sat in two places at once. Neither felt whole. Daniel came home later that night, his tie loose, his eyes tired. He kissed her cheek again, thanked her for dinner, asked how her day was, but never noticed the storm behind her smile. Emily answered softly, the same as always, carrying her secret like a shadow. She lay awake long after he fell asleep beside her. The ceiling stretched above, blank and silent, while Ryan's words filled her mind. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't forgotten. She was seen, but being seen by the wrong person was its own kind of heartbreak, in the darkness. Emily realized she stood at a crossroad. One path was safe: stay silent, stay loyal, keep her marriage steady even if her heart starved. The other path was dangerous, uncertain, filled with questions she was too afraid to ask.